Welcome. This has been a long time. Wow. This is my professor. I want to introduce everyone to my professor and mentor, professor and conductor, Grammy Award winner, Joel Thome. Everybody, here he is. The legendary Joel Thome, as we say today for the show.
Thank you, Todd.
And I want to ask you some questions, and maybe we can, give a shout out. I don't know if you want to mention any of your students that have touched your lives through the years, or whatever you want. We can do that and all that good stuff. And yeah, so we can start with some questions. So the first question is, Joel, where were you born?
I was born in Detroit, Michigan.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good. Did you spend most of your life growing up there?
A good part of my youth was spent growing up in Pontiac, Michigan. I was born in Detroit and grew up in Pontiac, Michigan.
Okay. Very good. How did music come into your life?
My very first memories were of music from the radio because there was no television at that time. And so all of the music that I heard was on the radio, besides the fact that my older sister and my father were taking piano lessons by visiting with a visiting piano teacher. So my first memories of music had to do with whatever was on the radio and the sounds of my older sister and my father practicing piano.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But interesting, on the radio, I would hear everything from gospel to bluegrass to blues to jazz, everything that was coming over the airwaves at that time.
Great, great. So when did you begin playing music or performing?
I began when I was about 8 years old, studying, starting to compose, starting to conduct, starting to listen very deeply.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Okay, that's all right. That's all right. Good. Check that one off the list. So, who were some of your influences growing up?
I was influenced by everybody coming over the radio, first of all. So eventually, when I got older and television came along, I used to watch Toscanini on conducting the RCA Radio Orchestra. So I was watching Toscanini. Later on, I was able to start hearing jazz. Remember that Pontiac, Detroit area was a very active region for jazz, blues, and classical music with the Detroit Symphony.
So
As I became more and more involved with music, it wasn't too much longer that I started to make the decision that I was going to be a composer and conductor and percussionist. My main instrument outside of piano at that time was percussion. I should say too that we had a terrific public school music system.
Yeah.
That public school music system, the students would begin when they were in grade school, and they would continue in that system all the way up through high school.
Mm-hmm. So, what made you want to become a conductor?
I was taken as a child to the Detroit Symphony in one of those school programs. And I was so taken by the orchestra. And I must say, I was deeply influenced by the bass section. I heard the sound in the orchestra, the bass section, and to me that was like magic.
Like magic.
So I decided I'm going to be a conductor.
Great. Which leads us to the big question that everybody wants to know. When did you begin working with Frank Zappa, and how did it come about?
One thing to remember is that my involvement with rock and roll was much later in my life. I didn't know anything. I was completely immersed in classical music and later on jazz. So I got to tell you, I didn't know anything about rock and roll. But well, when I was in high school, I was part of a group of students that was sent to hear the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana percussion ensemble led by Paul Price. And they played Varese ionization. It was the first time I had heard Varese. That changed my life.
It also had a very deep impact on mine as well, because I have right here
Yes.
some of the first notes that were, let's say, you had told me, and I had, written down
Yes.
what to listen to and what to get into as I started taking lessons privately from you at SUNY Purchase College.
Yes.
So one of the first one, it says Varese.
Yes.
Everything.
Yes.
And
That's true.
and then the next one, it says Stockhausen.
Everything.
Everything. You're getting this right. You got it. And then it says Ligeti.
Everything.
Also, and then Zen and the Art of Archery by Watts.
Yes.
So
yeah,
I just want to.
I remember that very well. One thing that's very interesting about this, when I was in high school and heard Varese and ionization, there was another fellow about the same age that was just listening to Varese. And interesting, both of our lives were totally changed for the better in hearing Varese. Our ears and our minds were totally opened. And that other fellow was Frank Zappa. And later, Frank and I reminisced about the fact that we had discovered Varese almost exactly the same time. And the piece that really changed our lives was ionization. That was my entrance into new music, as it was to Frank as well.
Interesting. You had won a Grammy for your work with Frank Zappa?
The Grammy came as a result of my album called, the answer to your question is yes,
Mm-hmm.
came as a result of my work on the album put out by Polygram that I did as a tribute to Frank, which was called Zappa's Universe.
Mm-hmm.
The Grammy itself states that the Grammy went to Steve Vai as rock performer, outstanding rock performer, rock instrumentalist of the year, with Joel Thome as music director, conductor, arranger of Zappa's Universe and and the Orchestra of Our Time.
It's amazing. Do you remember some of the pieces that you performed with Zappa's Universe?
Yes, I would like to. I'd like to answer the first part of your other question
Sure.
just before I go on to that, and then I'll go on to that.
Okay.
So you asked how I met Frank. I met Frank because Frank and I met through Louise Varese, who was the widow of Varese, and a great translator of Rimbaud, the poetry and work of Rimbaud.
Okay. So,
Louise Varese and I had become very close friends, and of course I became very much involved with Varese's music and did perform Varese's music all over the world.
and you also worked with Steve Vai as well.
That's right. Yeah, that's part of the answer to this part of the question.
Mm-hmm.
So in concluding the question, your question of how Frank and I met, Louise Varese and I became very close friends, and I invited her to go out for her 89th birthday. And then at her 89th birthday, we were having dinner. I said, Louise, we were talking about Varese. I said, Louise, I've been so influenced by Varese. For your 90th birthday, I'm going to make a tribute concert to Varese, retrospective. And she was very happy about that. I therefore, with the help of my wife at the time, whose name is Carol Sorrell, organized a committee to present the tribute to Varese for Louise's 90th birthday. I was in Los Angeles conducting concerts in Los Angeles. I think at that point I had conducted a concert with the LA Philharmonic, and I got a call in the morning from Louise Varese. And Louise said, Joel, is it okay for me to invite Frank Zappa to be on the committee for the Varese tribute? And I said, sure, Louise, that would be wonderful. And I know how much Frank was influenced and how much his life had changed by Varese. At that point, she said, okay, I'm going to call Frank right now. It was no more than about 30 minutes later that I got a call from Frank. And he said, Joel, I just got a call from Louise Varese. She asked me to be on the committee for the tribute to Varese. And he said, I've thought it over. Not only will I be on the committee but I will host it. And at that time, we were thinking about doing it at the Whitney Museum, which had been doing a lot of new music at that time. He said, but we're not going to do it at the Whitney Museum. We're going to do it at the Palladium.
At the Palladium in New York.
In New York, yeah. And I just thought that was a terrific idea. So I said, sure, Frank, this sounds great.
What year
He
was
said,
this?
okay.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry?
What year was it? Your 80s? It was the early 80s?
It was, well, the performance was in April of 81.
Is that where the picture was taken with the balloon? The famous?
Yes. The balloons were sent to Frank and myself from Susie Cream Cheese.
Ah, Susie Cream Cheese, yes.
And and Frank and I were, at that moment, we were heading to go on stage at the Palladium. We were coming out of our dressing rooms.
It's a great photo.
And somebody brought up the photo is by Peter Vidor, wonderful photographer. And he happened to be there at that moment, waiting to shoot some photos. My production manager came up and said, you just got this gift. And he handed it to us both, and it was to us from Susie Cream Cheese. And Peter Vidor snapped that photograph. That photograph I love that photograph.
It's like a career-defining photograph.
Yeah, that's right. I should tell you that on that Varese committee for the tribute to Varese was Pierre Boulez, Louisa Calder, who was the head of the committee. It was Harold and Hester Diamond, whose son is also known as Michael Diamond. You probably know Michael from the Beastie Boys.
The Beastie Boys, everybody. Woo! We got a Beastie Boys.
And Harold and Hester said they were tremendous help for many things that I was doing at that time. And they said they would be on the committee and help. All they wanted was, after the concert, there should be a special dinner. And at that dinner, it was dinner in honor of Luis Varese and Frank as host. They said the only thing they were asking that Michael Diamond, their son, and Melissa, my daughter, would have a chance to sit with Frank at the dinner. So somewhere there's a wonderful photograph of Michael Diamond, my daughter Melissa, and Frank all sitting together at the dinner.
So hopefully somebody can find it and email it to Joel.
Yeah.
You can get that.
I'm sorry.
It's no problem. It's nice. It's nice sound effects for the orchestra of
our time.
Of our time. Exactly right.
I'd like you to know a few things about Pontiac, Michigan.
Okay.
Of course, it was an automobile town, and everybody in the automobile industry, the workers, the unions, they were all listening to all sorts of music. So I heard Appalachian music at that time. I heard blues, jazz, and about Pontiac, the Jones brothers are from Pontiac. The Jones brothers, who really changed the course of new jazz. They were some of the greatest jazz musicians of all time. And they were from Michigan too. Also from Pontiac, I mean, besides the Jones brothers, There was also Lucian Lugoshevsky, one of the major composers of the 20th century, who happened to live. I told you about that piano that my father and sister played, my earliest memories. My father told me that that piano, that baby grand piano, was an instrument that he bought from the father of Lucian Lugoshevsky. Now, Lucian Lugoshevsky was one of the early students of Varese, just showing you how this circle, this spiral, it really unwinds itself.
Otherwise known as inside the perfect circle, which is about a mandala. We might get to that as well.
Okay, inside the perfect circle.com is Inside the Perfect Circle, the Odyssey of Joel Thome. It is a very fine documentary on me. It's a beautiful documentary done by Chris, the filmmaker and director, Chris Pepino. So it's available for anyone to see online.
It's also available on YouTube.
On YouTube, yes. Thank you.
We might put a link in when we put this out and everybody's happy. Then I'll put a link in the bottom so that people can click on it and they can go directly from this video to your documentary, which is amazing. It's a great documentary. It goes very in depth. Talks about your orchestration that you've done and a lot of the conducting as well. But there was something that I'm not sure if it was mentioned about the Israel Symphony Orchestra that you worked with as well.
Yes, the Israel Philharmonic.
The Philharmonic, yes.
I was about 18 and a half when I was invited by the extraordinary conductor, Carlo Maria Giolini. I was invited to join the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra. And I was about 18 and a half and I was asked to become the principal percussionist and timpanist with the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra. And that, of course, was a life-changing experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a lot of the performers, conductors, soloists that I heard while growing up as a young fellow in Pontiac. My girlfriend's father had a huge record collection. A lot of the folks on those recordings, I then had an opportunity to perform with a lot of those conductors, soloists, including Yehudi Menuhin, Arthur Rubinstein, Leonard Bernstein, some of the great conductors, and Igor Stravinsky, some great conductors and composers of our time. And it was in Israel where I met my mentor, Alexander Boscovich. So that changed my life. That was one of the life-changing moments in my time with the Israel Philharmonic.
Quite remarkable.
That was a remarkable time, Todd.
How long did you stay in Israel?
Few years. Then I was beginning to feel that a tremendous urge to put together a group for the music of our own time. I felt that an orchestra really needed to be more than just a depository or museum of works of the 17th and 18th century, but ought to be a place where the music of our own time would be heard. by the finest performers in the world. And I began to feel that it was time for me to move on. My wife and I were offered scholarships to the University of Pennsylvania, and we accepted that. Although, looking back, I wish I had spent more time in Israel. I wish maybe I had started that group in Israel. So we went to Pennsylvania, to Philadelphia. And I did put together a group of some of the finest performers in our country to form a group for new music. During the course of that, I met Virgil Thompson and Alexander Calder. And I decided to put together, through a friend of mine who suggested this was through Romulus Franceschini, a wonderful composer and a terrific bass player, who suggested that we should bring back the performance that Alexander Calder did with Virgil Thompson and Eric Satie, in which he did sets for Socrate by Eric Satie. Virgil Thompson had put that performance together in about 1936 at the Hartford Athenaeum, sponsored by the Friends and Enemies of New Music in Hartford. So Romulus Franceschini suggested one night when we were out for supper with Virgil Thompson that it would be great if we could put that together. And so that started my collaboration with Alexander Calder on the performance of Satie Socrate with the Calder sets. Those sets are extremely important in the history of art of the 20th century, because Calder often expressed to me that it was, and he wrote about the fact that those sets were the inspiration for the Calder mobiles, particularly the larger mobiles. And that's what set his concept of motion in space and time through moving objects. So that changed Calder's life as well, and changed my life as well. Just the opportunity to collaborate with Alexander Calder. The work was supposed to have been done for the bicentennial in '76. And something happened in Philadelphia, and they had to cancel. So Calder said, we had a meeting with Calder and with the committee from the Whitney Museum that was sponsoring the show called Calder's Universe, which was a huge retrospective of Calder's work. So Calder said, okay, well, this will give us more time. He said, I would like to have a smaller set, both a large set and a small set, so that people all over the world in small theaters and large theaters could see this work. He said to me, this is the most important work of mine that I am doing now in this time of my life, particularly in this time of my life. And he said to me, I will be going to Paris for 2 weeks. I'll be at my dentist as soon as I get back. Please come in. I was living in Philadelphia at the time. He said, please come in and pick me up at my dentist. We will go to the fabricator, Walter Hatke, and we will take photographs. I will have Pedro Guerrero, who was his photographer at the time. I'll have Pedro Guerrero come and we'll shoot photographs together of the set. So I said, okay. We used to call Alexander Calder. Everybody, all of his friends call him Sandy. So I said, fine, Sandy, I'll call you up on the morning. He said, just call me in the morning and I'll meet you at my dentist. Lo and behold, I picked up the phone to call Sandy, and my wife was coming in on the same phone. And she said, oh, before you talk to Sandy, before you leave, I have to tell you some sad news. Sandy passed away this morning. So at that time, we had put together a group to help with this, which included Leonard Bernstein, again, Luis Fares, Luisa Calder, and the whole Calder family. And we said, okay, well, and Betty Allen, Virgil Thompson, we decided with this terrible news, there's only one thing to do, that is to wait another year and do this as
A tribute.
the National Memorial Tribute to Alexander Calder. And we decided to do it at the Beacon Theater, which at that time was just going through repairs and renovations. And they decided to open the Beacon Theater with this performance, the national tribute to Alexander Calder.
It's incredible.
And it was extraordinary. When the curtains parted and the lights went on the set, you could hear the gasp throughout the audience. It was standing room only, and everybody was there. Bernstein, Martha Graham, from the committee, Robert Wilson, Phil Glass, everybody came together for the tribute to Alexander Calder. And on the second half, we did the opera by Virgil Thompson. We did the oratorio version of the opera by Virgil Thompson and Gertrude Stein.
Oh, Gertrude Stein, yes.
Yeah, called Four Saints in 3 Acts. And people were hanging from the rafters. You could not buy a seat. The whole event was completely sold out. Was sold out completely for 2 nights and could have been running for 2 months.
At the Beacon Theater in New York.
At the Beacon Theater in New York. Yeah, that's right. Later on, of course, it became a home for a lot of fantastic rock musicians.
It did. So, yes, go on.
Okay, they did some tremendous shows by Santana, Buddy Guy, and the list goes on and on and on. But we brought Four Saints in 3 Acts back in the oratorio version with the collaboration with the singers from the opera company of the Opera Company of Harlem.
Yeah. So
later on, we took that performance to Carnegie Hall.
Really?
not with the Calder sets, but with the ballet, with the Opera Company of Harlem.
Yes.
And
Okay. Yes.
no, that's it.
Okay. So what I want to say is this has been the end of part 1, interview with the legendary Joel Thome. So we're going to be back with you in a few minutes. We're going to take a 2-minute pause. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Yes, thank you everybody for joining us.
And don't forget to look at the link at the bottom where you will find the link for the documentary, which is on YouTube, about the life, about the music of Joel Thome, called
Thank you, Todd.
Inside the Perfect Circle, the Odyssey of Joel Thome. You got to see it. You got to watch it, and it'll be in the description. So just check the description and click on the link, and you'll see it. It's great. 1 hour, just 1 hour. It's good.
Thank you, Todd.
So we're gonna take a little pause, a little break, and we're gonna be right back.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you.
Sounds very good. First of all, I want to thank you, Todd. You are really good, and what a great pleasure it is to an interview with you.
Oh, thank you so much. I love this. This is great.
I still remember that day when we got together, and we spoke about Varese, everything, Webern, everything, Ligeti, everything, Stockhausen, everything you can get your hands on.
So I tricked you, Joel. This is actually going right into part 2. So this will be the second part of our journey into the life and music of Joel Thome. So I'm also going to put in the second video, if we split it up, I'll put another link for the documentary. And I want to tell everybody out there that your music is on Spotify. So if they want to hear what Joel Thome sounds like when he's conducting for an orchestra or a quintet or a quartet or the Scorchio Quartet, you can find that on YouTube. But what you'll be able to find on Spotify is the Orchestra of Our Time, or just put in Joel Thome and you're going to find it. No risk. Just go to Spotify and check it out. You got nothing to lose.
Todd, I love you, man. Thank you so much, because I didn't realize it was on Spotify.
I checked it out. I was listening to it right before we talked because I wanted to get into the mode of like Joel Thome's music and everything. So like, yeah, it was definitely going on.
Oh, Todd, thank you, man.
Yeah.
You're a terrific interviewer.
Oh.
This series is going to be a great success all over Europe. How many programs are you doing in this series?
I think this is our 17th show.
17 show.
I mean, and since I've been back in New York, because this is probably maybe the 5th or 6th legendary show. But before that, I was doing a show called Conversations About Mental Health, and we did approximately 9 episodes in the studio and 1 via Zoom or Skype.
Todd, you are amazing.
Thank you.
Is this a podcast?
This is like a video podcast.
Video podcast. Oh, that's great.
So
what is the real definition of a podcast?
I think what a podcast is something that somebody can take on their walk or run or, nice drive in the car. Hopefully they don't have the headphones on, driving safely, not looking at the phone and all this stuff and doing that and being safe. And they can listen to it also, because I know some people, if they don't have time to look at it, they'll play it in the background and they'll listen and say, I just learned about conductor and composer Joel Thome, who won a Grammy for his work with Zappa and was also nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, which we also have to get to.
Thanks, Todd.
You're very welcome. I thank you. I thank you for exposing me to this world, because it's leading me to my dedication to you, which is basically that I dedicate all of my Polish recordings to Joel Thome. So the Wrocław sessions... Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Wrocław Sessions is like almost 2 hours of music. Some of it is written. Some of it is improvised. It's got the spirit of everything that you showed me in those great lessons at SUNY Purchase. I adhere this to my music because I think I was like, you're the hippest person I know, because you knew immediately what kind of music I was making. You're like, oh, you do free metal. I was like, you got it. Oh, you got it. Like, improvised composition in real time. So that's what I did. And actually, in 2014, I had an operation in 2013 and 2014 where I had a tumor in my spine.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was taken out once, and then it actually came back a year later, and I had to take it out again. And
Oh
when
God.
it was horrible.
I never knew you went through that.
Yeah, it's terrible. It was really bad.
That? When
That was
was that?
2013 was the first tumor, and the second tumor was 2014. I was living in Tübingen, Germany at the time.
Oh jeez.
It was terrible. But the best thing of it was I was lying in that bed the second time in 2014, and I said, what do I want to do in my life? What do I really want to do? And I said, I want to make music with like the musicians who I love the most. So like I met this guitar player from the Wrocław sessions when I was living in Breslau, Wrocław, Poland in 2003. And I knew him a very long time, and he helped me produce my material. And he is such an outstanding guitar player. His ears, everything. I mean, his recording, everything pristine. You can hear a pin drop, and it's perfect. So what we did is we actually got together for 6 or 7 days in Poland, in Dzierżonów, Poland, which is very close to Wrocław, which is also known as Breslau to the Germans. And anyway, and and so basically we got together for the 6 or 7 days, hit the record button. He made everything sound pristine first, hit the record button, and we just recorded for 6 or 7 days. I took the material back to Tübingen, Germany, to my little home studio that I had, and I edited everything into 60 tracks. It came out to, it's about 5 hours and 40 minutes of music. And so what I did is I started releasing this. Some of it is on Spotify. So if you go Todd Goldfinger Spotify, you're going to find one of the albums of the 4. And it's a 5 hour and 40 minute improvised composition piece, but broken into 60 parts.
That is fantastic. I'm definitely going to check that out.
And that is dedicated to you.
Bratslav. I mean, that was the scene. What is the proper pronunciation? Bratislav?
It's called Wrocław. In American English, it would be Wrocław.
Oh, Wrocław. Oh, it's not Bratislav.
No, but they built it up. I mean, it doesn't look the same. So like 17 years ago, it was like different place, very, very Eastern European feeling, even though they don't like being called Eastern European.
Yeah. It was also that area was one of the major Holocaust sites.
Yes.
I mean, that's what you must have seen there and experienced there.
Yeah. When I was about 23, my girlfriend at the time took me actually to, with her parents to Auschwitz. We actually went to Auschwitz. We drove there. It's about 5 hours from Wrocław, I think. Very close to Krakow as well, where I lived also.
And Köln, very close to Cologne, too.
Very close.
I mean, I think so. Maybe not.
And Berlin, about 5 hours from Berlin.
And Berlin, of course, yes.
Yeah, of course, you got it. Of course, Berlin, of course.
Yeah. Oh, God, what was that experience like for you?
Oh, Berlin? Oh, my God, if we get into Berlin, that's really something.
But I mean, Auschwitz.
Oh, Auschwitz? Oh, I was in tears. I couldn't. I was like, I completely broke down. It was one of the most horrifying experiences. But everybody has to go at least once.
Yes, I know what you mean.
And not to take a tour. If you go to Auschwitz, don't take a tour. Go by yourself. Go off the beaten path and take a walk around and see what you discover. Oh, they're saying, oh boy, that was a timer. Anyway, yeah. So you go for yourself. It's a very, let's say, it's a very dark spiritual experience, but it's also a very necessary spiritual experience, especially in these days and times when we have to be very, very, let's say, vigilant and very aware and very, whatever they call it, woke or whatever, about these sorts of things. We have to be very aware of these things because it could happen again, and we know that, and that's the problem that most of us, let's say, Jewish people have. Is that we're always thinking, oh, is it happening again? Uh-oh, his president. Is he gonna take us out? What's going on here?
Yeah, it's always on our mind.
Always.
And when I was made a member of the Israel Philharmonic, most of those musicians at that time had been in Berlin Philharmonic or other orchestras, but a lot of the musicians were survivors. So that was Very, very, very sobering experience.
That was in Israel?
Yes, in the Israel Philharmonic.
Mm. So I have a question for you. We
Yeah.
talked a little bit about new music. What is, for the people who are tuning in, they say they want to hear your music and they don't know how to listen to it, or what it's new music. What does that mean?
That's a very good question. That's what I called my Orchestra of Our Time. It means the music of our time,
Modern,
or contemporary.
contemporary, right.
Yeah,
That's a better
that
word.
can include every imaginable form of music, world music, music of Africa, India, all of the continents, music of, it can include rap, rock and roll, everything. It could include Appalachian music, and it could also include the classical music that is a part of our time. I mean, I always found Bach to be extremely contemporary.
Yeah,
So it
absolutely.
involves all time and all genre.
Yeah, I want to tell you how much I love Eric Satie. This
I'm
Gymnopédie.
so happy to hear that.
I'm a huge fan, and actually one of my pieces called Autumn, which you can also find on everything,
Oh, great.
um, is actually influenced and inspired by this Gymnopédie. I think it is, because
What
it's
beautiful pieces they are.
exactly. So the piece that I wrote is in 4 parts, and it's like a suite, and it goes through different changes, and it's influenced by this sort of aesthetic that he uses as well.
Ja, da, 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 ja, da, da, da. I want to hear that. What is your piece? What is the title of your piece?
It's called Autumn.
Autumn. Oh, okay. Got it.
Yes. And it's wonderful to see you. I'm so glad that I come back to New York. You're alive. You're well. You're hip as ever. Like,
I am so glad to see you, Todd. The last time I saw you before this, and I'm so excited about what you're doing and your music. And the last time I saw you, I think you were just leaving for Berlin, weren't you? Or
yeah, that's right. Because I came back to New York briefly. We were shooting a documentary film. Also, I also have a documentary film. But the problem is that I don't have any of the rights to it, and I don't have a copy. So that's another story. But
oh yeah,
yeah.
they wouldn't let you have the film. I think that's rotten.
I signed over the rights. I did the typical artist musician thing. Oh yeah, let's do it for the good of the art, and that's what I
Yeah,
did.
yeah, you did the altruistic, artistic trap there.
Gave it all
Oh
away.
yes, you can have, yeah, give it to the world,
Give it to the world. The universe will give it back to you.
and then you're lost without any
Lost without a penny.
But you're not lost yet.
No.
Did you contract
Well,
lawyers for the arts?
I don't want to go into too much, but the thing is, I think I'm gonna have my. It sounds like I was against it at first, but actually it sounds like a very good idea. That my mother is actually gonna try to contact her and see what's going on with the film. Because I'm the main protagonist of the film, but she says that it's none of my business and I should stop contacting her. And so I stopped and I leave her alone, and I haven't written in months. And yeah, so
You
that's
said your mom's going to contact her?
yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And see if we could get a copy of the film just for the
Oh,
house, just for
that's a
people
good
that
idea.
come by, and we can show them the film. Say, oh, look at Todd's documentary. It's actually about mental health issues, so I think people should see it as well.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You know,
Is your
but
mom a lawyer?
my mom is not a lawyer; she's a hairdresser.
Uh-huh.
Farthest thing from a lawyer.
Uh-huh. Well, not so far.
Not so far. Not
I
so
had to go
far.
to see her right away.
what
Does she make emergency calls?
she makes house calls. So what my mom is going to do is she's going to come down to the city to where you live. She's going to wear a mask. She'll have gloves, and she will cut your hair in the city. They'll make a day of it. They'll go to the 9/11 memorial. They'll no, I don't know what they're going to do, but they will be able to come down. My mom at least will. With her husband, will come down to the city and cut your hair. I will try to work on that. I'll get it happening. We're going to make it happen. Let's do it.
I'm sorry I look so
What do you want
mangy.
to say? Use a Yiddish word, please.
Okay. I
And
can't think of it.
I'm also doing a show called Ashkenicity with a friend of mine from England.
That's a great title.
And we talk about Jewish life and what it's like and anti-Semitism and all this stuff and all different topics about Jewish artists. And the thing is, if you want to be on the show, we could also interview you too, but it'd be very Jewish.
Okay, I would love to be on the show.
Oh, okay, so we'll do that another time, but that's a good idea. Ashkenicity.
I identify more as I feel closer to Sephardic traditions.
Yeah.
I love Sephardic Judaism. Judaism of North Africa, Ethiopian, Latin America, Spain, etc. Although my DNA is Ashkenazic. When I was in Israel, I was very closely associated with the Yemenite community.
As there is quite a community.
The Yemenite community is huge. And the beauty of their being, beauty of their music, of their tradition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tradition, of course.
Oh. So anyway, Ashkenacity, that's a hell of an idea. That's a great idea. Man, you're just blossoming with ideas for these shows.
Thank you. I'm a late bloomer.
Well, you've been blooming ever since I met you in your student days.
Thank you, Joel. You're a huge inspiration for me. I don't think these improvised compositions in real time would have written themselves if it wasn't for a little Joel Thome, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear that. I'm really glad to hear that because they sure are beautiful. You're doing beautiful work.
Thank you. Thank you.
And how did you learn to walk again? It must have taken you a long time to learn to walk again.
Took me a few days. They allowed me about a week to do I went to what's it called, PT, physical therapy.
Yeah.
So I did physical therapy for about a week, and the first time that the operation was done, it was very difficult for me to walk again.
Yeah.
It's good that you pointed that out because I forgot that part. I completely forgot it somehow. How difficult it was to walk after that, and the catheter and all that stuff and all that business.
Did you do your PT in Germany?
Yes. And I even spoke German with the physical therapist as well.
Are you fluent in German?
Pretty much.
You amaze me, dude.
Thanks, dude. oh, dude, look, dude.
I love it. I love it.
Another creation. Yes. But I want to ask you some more questions about mandalas. What are mandalas? Maybe you could tell us.
I first discovered mandalas when I was living in Israel and was very interested in Kabbalistic illustrations and meditation. And I began to find all the books I could find on Tibetan mandalas, prayer mandalas, mandalas that are from Kabbalistic symbolism. So there are mandalas are a very vehicle for journeys into the self and spiritual awakening. Really a kind of yoga based on very deep meditation. The Tibetan monks do sand mandalas that are done during prayer by spraying sand in the most ornate, the most beautiful colors you can imagine. They're a form of prayer, a form of worship. And when the Tibetans are finished with these extraordinary, beautiful mandalas, they then wipe them away. They are not meant to be preserved.
Hmm.
I was very influenced by the work, philosophy, and poetry of the spiritual thinking Sri Aurobindo. I discovered the work of Sri Aurobindo while I was living in Israel through my mentor, Boscovich Thea. There are two very, very important influences on my spiritual becoming, besides my Judaism, are the works of Sri Aurobindo, the influence of yoga and meditation on my consciousness, particularly the work Life Divine. Stockhausen was also very influenced by the works of Sri and Aurobindo. And Stockhausen wrote about it in the fact that his life was so influenced by the works of Sri Aurobindo of Life Divine. He was doing a concert in New York. He was doing an interview for the New York Times. I happened to see that interview. So the next day, it was in a Sunday Times edition. The next day I called Stockhausen's management to find out where I could reach him. And I reached him on the phone, and we became very good friends at that point. And our first discussion was all about the works of Sri Aurobindo. Now, involved with that was my study of mandalas, and I began to see more and more Eastern spiritual art, which a lot of the art was based on mandalas. At one point along the way, when my wife and I were living in Philadelphia, I had an extraordinary vision during my studies of the work of Sri Aurobindo. That vision was so powerful in sound and visually that I thought I might go deaf just hearing the sound, which was the sound of all worlds. I thought I would go deaf, and I prayed, please let this sound continue. Even if I must go deaf, continue this sound. Now, of course, when I came out of that experience, I needed to find a way to write that experience because it was in a totally new sound. I had to find a way to notate it.
Because it has a different notation.
I needed a different notation. I worked for almost 7 years to find the notation. I knew that traditional notation would not work to realize this music. I realized that what I was hearing was something that required a different sound, a different notation. And at that point, I was studying the mandalas and started drawing mandalas. They just started coming to me. And they were coming to me in my sketching. All sorts of very sacred geometric figures. And it dawned on me after up to almost 7 years that I had found a way to notate the sound that I was hearing. In that time, I met Lucas Foss, and through my second wife, Carol Sorrell, Lucas Foss and I became friends, and Lucas invited me to do a piece for the Brooklyn Philharmonic. And I was working through meditation and yoga, and the mandalas came back. And as I mentioned a moment ago, I said, this is the notation for the sound. And I began to write down what processes I could use to realize this sound in a performance version. I wrote down the instrumentation, what came out. I had been working in analog electronic studios at that time. So I heard analog electronics, I heard strings, I heard sound sculpture, I heard processing. Stockhausen had introduced me to Peter Zinoviev, who built his briefcase version synthesizers, which were called the Putney. And I had purchased 4 Putneys from Peter Zinoviev. And I decided to use the Putney synthesizers and process the orchestra sound through the Putney synthesizers. And I worked out a system of notation based on mandalas. And it was getting close to the concert that Lucas needed the piece for, very close. And I was thinking, Lucas is going to think that I've lost my mind when I show him the score. And I sent him the score, which was for chamber orchestra and the instruments that I mentioned, plus shortwave radios. And I expected Lucas to say, Joel, I'd love to do this, but you lost your mind. No, he said, Joel, I'm really fascinated by your notation. It's perfect for what this concert will be. And I needed to find a way to explain it to the musician. So Lucas said, I'm not sure I can explain this properly to the musician, so I would like you to conduct it. I guess he wanted the rotten vegetables to be thrown at me. And he wanted the revolution of the orchestra to go down. So Lucas was so generous and loving, and he said, okay, so I went to the first rehearsal. I passed out the work.
Sheet, the works.
Yeah, they were bound together. The notation is done on a see-through sheet, a kind of plastic material. Velour. And as you go from one, each one is a separate mandala. As you go from one sheet to the other sheet, the totality of the work comes through, and that's a complete mandala, like a Tibetan mandala. And the structure is very tight. It's very precisely organized, geometrically organized. So when you go one sheet to the other sheet and you begin to see through the design keeps changing. So the work keeps changing. The work is never the same. I passed it out. I explained it to the musicians. They were fascinated by the notation. And I said, please take it home tonight and please look at it and you'll get the idea. I came back to the rehearsal. I looked around after the orchestra left. I looked around. I saw that all the notation was gone. So I was very upset. I thought they probably threw it in the closest wastebasket. I came back. I said, the next rehearsal, I said to the personnel manager, Maurice Edwards, where? I don't understand where the music is. There's no music in the folder. He said, that's because they all took it home and they wanted to put it up on the walls. And they came to that second rehearsal and they played it perfectly and so beautifully. I couldn't have asked for anything better.
Wow. So
the concert also included works of myself, Fred Jeffsky, and the poet, and various poets, including Ginsberg. Ginsberg was also in that. So Lucas put all of us together. Lucas was a genius, not only as a composer, but as a pianist and conductor. One of the finest Bach pianists I've ever heard. That's the story of the Mandalas.
That's great. That's amazing. So now people should know what a mandala is, and if they're curious about it, they can watch the film Inside the Perfect Circle, The Odyssey of Joel Thome, and we're going to put a link to it on this video. So if you haven't watched it yet, stop watching this video, go watch that movie right now. No, just kidding. But watch both. Watch this and then watch the movie if you have time during the lockdown.
It's a .com. So, no, but
it's a documentary.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you on this video cast.
Absolutely. I mean, I want to talk about the Vox box and everything like this, but they can also get that Vox box on Spotify if they put in Joel Thome or Orchestra of Our Time. Is that correct?
Oh, that's correct. Yes, and they can also hear the Nonsuch release of the complete opera, 4 Saints and 3 Acts, which I did with Orchestra of Our Time. It's the only recording available of the complete work of Virgil Thompson and Gertrude Stein. 4 Saints and 3 Acts on Nonsuch recordings.
Okay. So I had a couple questions for you, but also that you taught at Carnegie Mellon University and SUNY Purchase,
Yes,
right? And you were also involved with the Bronx Museum of the Arts.
that's correct.
Mhm,
I was head of the Department of Music at Carnegie Mellon.
mhm.
And when I first came back to the United States after my several years in Israel, and at the time of my collaboration with Alexander Calder, at that point, we decided to move Orchestra of Our Time from Philadelphia to the South Bronx because an Orchestra of Our Time is an orchestra of our time. And I thought, well, we're better to be able to play on the streets and in vacant lots. We also had a very active prison program in Pennsylvania.
You played for
You know,
prisoners?
so I decided that we should, well, we decided as a group that we should go to the South Bronx. And people were still, there were still drug dealers shooting at each other from the rooftops. Charlotte Street looked like Dresden after the war. And we were very welcomed into the South Bronx. And Orchestra of Our Time founded a consortium with Fred Darris of the South Bronx Community Action Theater, and with the Bronx Museum of the Arts, at that time directed by Luis Cancel, who eventually became the Commissioner for Cultural Affairs of the City of New York under Mayor Dinkins. So we had a three-part consortium.
Okay. So
And
that you brought culture into a otherwise known as, like, they call it the ghetto. I mean, obviously we know the ghetto is something else, but they call the Bronx, sometimes they refer to that. People that don't know New York, they say, this is the part of New York that's like heavy crime and stuff like that. So you're bringing culture into this area. Is that correct?
yes, but the part that's incorrect is I don't think I would refer to it. I
As a
wouldn't refer
ghetto,
to
not
it
as a
as
ghetto.
ghetto.
A ghetto, right, right.
Yeah, it was more of a result of the time of that period in New York's history. The South Bronx has always been extremely important to New York history. In fact, some of the most well-known actors, scientists, educators, social activists came from the South Bronx, including Jonas Salk. Jonas Salk, the creator of the polio vaccine, was raised in the South Bronx with his brother. And Jonas and I had many talks about that. But what I could tell you about that particular time in the South Bronx, everybody said, "Are you sure you want to go into the South Bronx? That's really dangerous." I found more talent, more gifts, more spirit on the streets of the South Bronx than all of New York combined.
Hmm.
And I am very thankful that those years in the South Bronx provided the opportunity for Orchestra of Our Time and for all of us to learn from the folks who were active in the South Bronx at that time. I mean, the amount of music that came out of the South Bronx was extraordinary. Willie Colon and the whole Latin jazz movement.
Yeah. People
The,
forget that.
and the Yiddish theater was very much an outgrowth of the folks that were in the Bronx and the Lower East Side of New York, both of them. So this was a great opportunity for me and those that I worked with to learn from the South Bronx. We also learned a lot about political action and about anti-racism, and all of us coming together to join hands in the South Bronx. And one of the legends of the South Bronx, of course, there were many, many. One of them was Fred Darris, who together with all of those that went through his program, were able to show us the way to fight racism through artistic involvement, awareness, and community organization. Those years were very important. One of Darris's associate directors for the South Bronx Community Action Theater was Jose Serrano, Congressman Jose Serrano. Congressman Serrano grew up in South Bronx Community Action Theater, and so did Luis Cancel, and Willie Colon, and the list just goes on and on and on and on.
So I just want to ask you two more questions, and then we can say that was good. We can say good enough. You can keep it. You know, that stuff. So okay, so I have a question for you. Sure. What is your favorite beauty in this world?
Did you say deity?
Beauty. Oh, you can say deity also. Yeah, deity or beauty. Your pick.
Oh, music, poetry. My life is devoted to music and the beauty. When people are touched by a work of art or a sound that stirs their heart and soul and leads them to a higher spiritual ideal, makes the world a better place.
What matters most in music?
Heart and spirit and soul. Love. Love is all encompassing. Love is at the core of for me, it's at the core of any artistic work, but it must be at the core of music.
It's wonderful. A beautiful note to end on.
Okay, I'm with you there, Todd. And in my music, there's no beginning, no ending. It's all just one infinite outpouring. As I noticed for you in your extraordinarily beautiful music, and I hope you give your audience an opportunity to listen to your beautiful work.
Thank you.
And I thank you for this opportunity. And I want to say hello to all the folks out there. It is a wonderful opportunity to interact with you. We're forming a collective for art and wellness. And any of you that might have an interest in what we're doing, it's a global activity that will, global action, anti-racism, an act of love that we have representatives from China, from the United States, from Brazil, Latin America, Europe, Africa, all over the world. And if any of you are interested in getting involved,
Yes, please.
intend to say, okay, and we intend to set up a platform that will take all of your works. If you, Todd, want to collaborate with somebody in Africa, somebody in
Absolutely.
China, you will be able to do that, and they will have the joy of collaborating with you.
Are you talking about musical collaboration or just speaking?
Well, we asked that we're looking for collaboration.
Okay, because I can also play music with anybody who's out there and wants to have some bass on there, some flamenco bass as well, and different improvisations.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. So we have you in mind, and we will bring you in. And
Right.
it's just an opportunity for folks all over the world to come together.
I love it.
It's music, it's art in every form, poetry, filmmaking, art in every form, architecture, as I said, film, performance works. So we will
Yes.
we'll zoom you in.
Please join me to the collective.
Thank you. You are part, and anybody out there that's interested, please contact me at joelthome@gmail.com. And it also involves folks that are interested in sustainable
Living.
solutions for living, sustainable living, and giving to the world in sustainable ways. So it's open to scientists, it's open to everybody that's looking to create a better world between people and between ourselves and the earth.
It's wonderful. I thank you, Joel Thome, and I dedicate my Polish recordings to you.
Todd, you have moved me so much by your love and your kindness and sharing this day with me. Thank you so much. I love you all.
Thank you. And thank you for being a part of this legendary program and being a part of this and speaking your truth and about beauty and your beauty and everything that is good in the world that needs to be there, because we need more goodness and we need more artists, I think, so yes. I mean, the more creative people can be and less destructive, the better, right?
Absolutely. Instead of attention being sent on destruction. I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
I can't even find it.
It's good. It's a good ending to our program. It's perfect.
I am so sorry.
No, it's good. We got some music in there.
But I am so sorry. Where is that dumb thing? I don't even know where it is.
I can call you on it, and you can find it if you want later. After this, I'll call you, and we'll talk about everything and see if everything was satisfactory and everything like that. So, anyway,
I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
I put it on Do Not Disturb, so the first thing it did was disturb
That's okay. That's okay because
4 times. I can't even find it, my friend.
so
Oh,
I'm
here I
gonna.
just found
Oh, you
it.
got it. Okay. Good. So let's say goodbye to everybody. I'm sure they want to watch the documentary now. The documentary, which is called Inside the Perfect Circle, The Odyssey of Joel Thome.
Dot
Check it
com.
out. Check it out. .com.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And also, if anybody's interested, you should definitely check out Orchestra of Our Time. You can also put in Joel Thome on Spotify, and you will find the music. And it's breathtaking. There are 9 tracks. I believe it's Schoenberg, Della Piccola, Crom, Boulez, and many, many others.
Todd, I thank you so very much.
You got it, man. You got it. Anytime, anytime. I'm here. I'm in New York now, so let's stay in touch.
Oh, you're in New York? I didn't realize you were in New York.
Yeah.
Where were you the last time we spoke?
My apologies. I couldn't hear what you said.
Jeez. I'm going through iPhone torture right now.
Sure. Last time we spoke, it was, I think I might have been in Hanoi, Vietnam, or Krakow, or maybe if it was a year ago, oh, I don't know. Maybe I was in Florida, and then before I went around, I was all over the place. But now I'm stationary, and I'm doing the show, and hopefully doing a good thing, and hopefully people will like it and subscribe and check out the music of Joel Thome, Orchestra of Our Time. Check it out. Check out. I'm plugging the hell out of this. I want people to watch it. So
Thank
great.
you so much, Todd.
Great. Love you, man. Wish you the best. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Todd, I love you and I thank you so much and all this great work you're doing.
Thank you.
Not
man.
only as a composer, but as a person to spread the love and spread the word.
That's what we're doing. So, love you. Talk to you soon. Thank you for tuning in. Interview with the legendary. All right. Yes. Great to see you, Joel.
Great to see you, Todd. Thank you.
Thank you.